Alex Rowley, followed by Gillian Martin.
Presiding Officer, I would also thank Richard Lyle for bringing this motion forward today. I certainly learned from a very early age about what had happened to the Jews during the Second World War. I did so because my mum regularly talked about the Second World War and what happened. What she was never able to explain to me was how a group of human beings could murder on an industrial scale other human beings. And I don't think that's ever been explained. But when I was in Auschwitz last Easter, the guide, who was excellent and quite chilling, it was a chilling visit that I think remains in my memory every day. But I asked her, how could this happen? And it was something, I think, that Tom Arthur said earlier about how hate, anti-Semitism, racism, false news can start to spread and people start to believe it. And that's why it is right and proper that we always call out hate, racism, anti-Semitism wherever it exists, and that we call out fake news. The other point that guide made to me that day, and I think it is important, was she said to me that when Hitler came to power, he initially wanted to expel many of the Jews from Germany. And the problem that they ran into was that as refugees, other countries would not take them. And I'm reminded of that by a story of the MS St. Louis, which was a German ocean liner that set off in 1939 with more than 900 Jews on board. It tried to dock in Cuba, it then tried to dock in America, it then tried to dock in Canada, and none of those nations would allow those refugees to go into their country. And historians estimate that approximately a quarter of those people died in extermination camps once they had gone back into Europe. An important point about this debate and Holocaust Remembrance Day is surely that we learn from history. Not only could how such an awful, terrible thing happen for human beings to other human beings, but we learn from that. And that's why the theme of this year's Holocaust Memorial Day, Torn from Your Home. You know, there are 50 million people, it's estimated, displaced across the world. We see people fleeing violence, horrendous violence, and the threat of death from Syria, and yet they find it difficult for countries to take them in. So while we condemn the Holocaust, we need to remember that today, as Richard Lyle said, Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, Darfur, but it's happening today across the world. And let's then not forget the countries that are so poverty-stricken that people that are starving to death are not able to flee, such as Yemen. So it's important that yes, we remember the horrors so that they can never happen again. But sadly, many of these things continue to happen. And it's important, therefore, that we address that. When I was in Krakow and did a tour of Krakow, the guide took me to the Jewish quarter, and Jewish people had been moved out in their tens of thousands into a ghetto. Most of them ended up in the extermination camps and died. But nobody was standing up for them. Why did that happen? So I think those lessons are there, but anyone that thinks that today we don't have these threats needs to think again. Let's remember the lessons. And I would conclude by, I think, congratulating the Scottish Government, local government, because our schools across Scotland, they are at the fore of ensuring that young people learn about exactly what did happen in the Second World War. And hopefully education is the way that we will try and address any of this happening in the future.